alive to have the scoop for a lifetime. We never should have come. Let's go.
You can't just leave him.
Run!
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2023 action comedy Freelance. The film is directed by Pierre Morel, who directed Taken, and it stars John Cena, Alison Brie, Juan Pablo Raba, Christian Slater and Alice Eve. Now the film focuses on John Cena's character Mason, who we see at the beginning of the film. It goes through a bit of a montage, but he ends up joining the military, doing really well in the military, but then gets seriously injured on a mission and has to leave the military. He then becomes a lawyer, but he's very, very dissatisfied with his life. He's married with a child, but his marriage is in trouble. And he's approached by his former military colleague, Sebastian, played by Christian Slater, who offers him a job. There is a journalist who has been offered to do an interview with a dictator in like a South American country. And he basically says, look, go with her, be her bodyguard, look after her, sort of thing. And he agrees to do it. When he gets over there, there is a military coup that takes place, and this dictator, President Venegas, and this journalist, Claire, are then under the protection of John Cena's Mason, and they have to kind of stay alive while he tries to help this president stop this military coup. Right, what are my thoughts on Freelance? Well, you would be forgiven for even knowing this film exists. This film came out several months ago, was in and out of cinemas, certainly in the US, I don't even think it made $10 million, and this is a highly budgeted film, I would suggest. No one's really spoke about it. I think on its first weekend it had that, infamous 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think the Rotten Tomatoes score now is really bad with critics, but much better with audiences. I think it's up to the 70%, something like that. So it's just one of those films that has just flown under everybody's radar. And which was why I was expecting to go into this film and, I expected it to be bad. I expected it to be, poor, and fairly unwatchable as well in some areas. And I have to say I was wrong. I was pleasantly surprised by this film. This film deserved to do better than it actually did. This film actually deserves to find an audience. Now, I'm not saying this film is, anything special or anything like that, but it's a competently made action comedy with some fun moments in it, some decent action set pieces, but it also has some problems as well. I'm trying to describe what kind of film to expect if you're going to go in and watch this film. What are you expecting, really? Because you probably have this idea in your head of what to expect. Now, imagine, do you remember that Dwayne Johnson film, one of his early films, Welcome to the Jungle? I think it was called The Rundown in America. Imagine that film, chuck it in a pot. Then you've got The Lost City, the Sandra Bullock film from a couple of years ago, chuck that in a tub. And then you've got Romancing the Stone. No, not Romancing the Stone, sorry. Jewel of the Nile is actually more appropriate. Chuck that in a pot. Stir them all together, and then out of those three movies this is almost like the illegitimate child of those three movies. There are elements of each of those movies in this film. And there are aspects of this film that do actually work quite well. As I've said, the action's fairly decent. There's decent chemistry between the three leads, which I was surprised about. Now, I'm going to be hand on heart and be very honest here. I'm not a big fan of John Cena and his acting. I've seen him in some stuff and he's decent, and that's usually like the comedy type stuff. He does have some decent comedy sensibilities. I've never been massively over-impressed with him when it comes to action movies, even though he obviously looks the part. And that's the same with this film. I don't think he carries off the physicality in this film. Not all the time, anyway. Sometimes he does. But there are some scenes where you just kind of he looks awkward. He's best in this scene, in this film, when he's having like comedic moments and comedic scenes with the other two characters. That's when he's at his best in this film. For me, I thought the film also did a really good job of subverting your expectations, because I know what I expected to see when I went to this film. I expected to see, a very vanilla, generic story. He's going over with this journalist to meet this dictator, and this dictator is showing one thing, that his country loves him and all this kind of stuff, but under the surface we know that he's an evil dictator, and he will reveal himself. And I was expecting that as the film kept going on and on and on, even when the coup happens and it looks like, he's on the wrong side of this coup, obviously, this president, and you start feeling sympathy for him, and he's thinking, hang on a minute, no, he's a baddie, he's going to be a baddie. And the film actually does a really good job, I think, of subverting your expectations, because that's what you expect, but it's absolutely not what you get. You get something completely different in this film. And I thought the film did a good job of that, because it could have easily gone down that route. I mean, and it would have been very, very predictable, but it tried to do something different, and it tried to kind of, I won't say force a message in there, but it just didn't do what you expected it to do. And for me, in movies like this, I always appreciate it when movies do that and they kind of change the script, sort of thing. So I like that, and I also liked his character, this Juan Pablo Raba's President Venegas. He was quite funny at times, but also at the same time he had some real charisma to him. And good chemistry with the other leads. And Alison Brie as well, who played Claire, this journalist. Now, while there was a strange attempt to kind of have her flirt with John Cena at one point in the film, you're just kind of thinking, well, he's going to reject her because he's in love with his wife still, which he duly does. Just kind of thinking the film didn't need that. But beyond that, I thought the film did a good job of kind of getting us to warm up to her character, because your initial introduction to her character, she doesn't come across well. She's entitled and treats John Cena like dirt for the most part, and it seems like she's just in it for herself. One of those, again, generic journalists that you see in many movies. So I think the film does a good job of subverting your expectations of who this person is, this journalist, and who this person is, this president. There are other aspects of the film that are quite predictable. The Christian Slater character, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Christian Slater. I think I'd like to see more in movies. But his involvement in the film is really quite predictable. And there are other aspects of the film that do feel quite predictable. There are aspects in other areas as well, like the script at times is terrible, but at other times it manages to kind of spark a little bit of an emotion out of you when it needs to. So it's a film that actually surprised me. I did not expect to have any fun really with this film. I expected this to be like a 4 out of 10 film. When a film like this just kind of goes under all the radars, doesn't do anything in the cinema, not liked by critics, nobody ever seems to really have heard of this one. You expect it to be bad, really, and it isn't. It's entertaining, don't get me wrong, it's not top level quality stuff sort of thing here. You have seen this sort of thing before and done better. But there is certainly an entertaining film underneath all this. If you can kind of look over some of the issues here in this film, there is an entertaining film underneath it all for you to enjoy. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I will be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.